A terrified young woman hid behind a blood-stained chopping block, certain the man hunting her would drag her back to a life of pain and misery. But when a scarred mountain giant stepped out of the blizzard and said, "You belong to me now," her nightmare only seemed to get worse. What happened next changed both of their lives forever. Watch the full story and follow our page for more powerful frontier tales like this one. Before we start the story, tell me in the comments where are you listening from and what time is right now. A cold winter wind howled through the streets of Silverton, Colorado in the winter of 1881. Snow covered the rooftops, the muddy roads, and the wooden boardwalks. The town looked peaceful from a distance, but behind the doors of the Silver Crown Saloon, cruelty ruled every corner. Abigail Higgins knelt on the rough wooden floor, scrubbing a sticky stain with trembling hands. Her fingers were red and cracked from endless work. Her shoulders ached, her back hurt constantly. At only 21 years old, Abigail looked much older. Life had stolen the brightness from her eyes. 2 years earlier, her father, Arthur Higgins, had supposedly died in a mining accident. Soon after, Bartholomew Cobb, the richest and most feared man in town, appeared with a document claiming Arthur owed him $1,200. Abigail had no money, no family, no one willing to help her, so Cobb forced her to work in his saloon to repay the debt. But the debt never seemed to get smaller. Every week, Cobb added new charges: food, lodging, clothing, interest. It was a trap she could never escape. "You missed a spot." The voice made Abigail flinch. She looked up. Bartholomew Cobb stood over her. His expensive suit looked perfect. His polished boots shined, but his eyes were cold and cruel. "I'll clean it, Mr. Cobb," Abigail whispered. "You better." He tapped a heavy riding crop against his leg. "Josiah Trent is coming tonight. If you embarrass me, you'll regret it." Abigail lowered her eyes. She knew better than to argue. Hours later, the saloon was packed with miners, businessmen, and gamblers. Music filled the room. Laughter echoed everywhere. Abigail carefully carried a tray filled with expensive crystal glasses. Suddenly, a drunken miner grabbed her skirt. She stumbled. The tray slipped from her hands. Crash! Glass shattered across the floor. Whiskey splashed everywhere, including directly onto Bartholomew Cobb's boots. The room fell silent. The piano stopped playing. Everyone stared. Cobb's face turned bright red. His eyes filled with rage. "Office, now!" Abigail's heart nearly stopped. Moments later, the office door slammed shut behind them. The first strike came across her back. Pain exploded through her body. She cried out. The second strike came harder, then a third, then a fourth. Cobb seemed unable to stop. "Worthless girl! You cost me money! You belong to me!" Tears streamed down Abigail's face. Finally, desperation took over. As Cobb raised the crop again, Abigail lunged forward. She knocked his legs out from under him. He crashed into his desk. Before he could react, she ran. She burst through the back door and into the freezing night. Snow whipped against her face. Her thin dress offered no protection from the cold. She stumbled through the alley behind the saloon. Her body shook violently. Ahead stood a large chopping block used for cutting firewood and butchering animals. Dark stains covered the wood. Abigail threw herself behind it, curled into a tiny ball, hidden from sight. Tears froze on her cheeks. "He'll kill me," she thought. "He's going to kill me." Inside the saloon, another man had just arrived. His name was Jeremiah Cole. The townspeople called him the Grizzly of the San Juans. He was over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, scarred, powerful, a mountain man who spent most of his life alone in the wilderness. When Jeremiah entered the saloon, conversations died immediately. People respected him. Some feared him. He silently approached the bar. Then he heard Cobb shouting, "Find the Higgins girl!" Cobb stormed from his office. "Drag her back here by her hair." Jeremiah slowly turned. His pale blue eyes locked onto Cobb. "The girl ain't going nowhere." The room became silent. Silent. Cobb frowned. "This is none of your business." Jeremiah took one step forward. "She's not property." Cobb laughed. "She owes me $1,240. Without speaking, Jeremiah reached into his coat and pulled out a heavy canvas bag. He tossed it onto a poker table. The bag landed with a heavy thud. Gold. Raw gold. The bartender waited. His eyes widened. "Over $2,000. The room gasped. Cobb stared greedily at the gold. "What do you want?" "The debt paper." Cobb hesitated. Then his pride got in the way. "I might charge a transfer fee." In an instant, Jeremiah grabbed him by the vest and lifted him completely off the floor. The riding crop fell from Cobb's hand. Jeremiah's voice became deadly calm. "You'll write that the debt is paid. You'll hand me the paper, and you'll never speak her name again." Terrified, Cobb nodded. Minutes later, the debt paper was in Jeremiah's hands. Without another word, he walked out the back door. Behind the chopping block, Abigail was losing consciousness from cold and pain. She heard footsteps, heavy footsteps. A huge shadow appeared. She slowly looked up. A giant stood before her. Scarred face, heavy furs, ice blue eyes. Fear flooded her heart. "Please," she whispered, "make it quick." Jeremiah crouched beside her. "Nobody is going to hurt you." Abigail stared at him, confused. "You don't belong to Cobb anymore." "What?" "I bought your paper." Then Jeremiah added words that terrified her. "You belong to me now." The world spun. She thought she had escaped one monster, only to be sold to another. Everything went black. She fainted. Jeremiah caught her before she hit the snow. Looking at her fragile body, his jaw tightened. She weighed almost nothing. Gently, he carried her to his horse and began the long journey into the mountains. When Abigail woke again, she was riding through a terrible blizzard. Snow filled the sky. The wind screamed. Jeremiah walked beside the horse, breaking a path through deep snow. Fear consumed her. Where was he taking her? What did he want? Hours later, they reached a large cabin hidden deep in the mountains. Jeremiah carried her inside. Abigail expected filth. Instead, she found warmth. A huge fireplace glowed. Clean wooden floors shined. Books filled shelves. Everything was neat and peaceful. Jeremiah placed her carefully on a bed. "You have no chores," he said. "You need treatment." Soon he was cleaning the wounds on her back. His large hands moved gently, carefully, respectfully. Not once did he make her feel unsafe. When the healing salve touched her wounds, tears filled her eyes. No one had shown her kindness in years. Afterward, Jeremiah burned her torn dress in the fireplace. "Why?" she asked. Jeremiah pulled out the debt paper. Then he told her the truth. Arthur Higgins had never owed Cobb money. The debt was fake. Her father had discovered a rich silver mine called Lucky Strike. Cobb wanted it, so he arranged Arthur's murder. Abigail felt her world shatter. Everything she believed was a lie. Her father was not a gambler. He had been murdered. And Jeremiah knew because Arthur once saved his life. Years earlier, a grizzly bear had nearly killed Jeremiah in the mountains. Arthur found him. He treated his wounds, kept him alive. And before Arthur died, he had told Jeremiah about the Lucky Strike mine. For 2 years, Jeremiah had been gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Now he finally had proof. Abigail's grief slowly turned into anger, burning anger. "I want justice," she said. Jeremiah nodded. "Then we'll get it." The next 4 weeks changed everything. Jeremiah taught Abigail how to survive, how to ride, how to shoot, how to track, how to defend herself. Every day she grew stronger. Every day she became less like the frightened servant from Silverton. And during those weeks, something else happened. They became close, very close. Jeremiah discovered her intelligence, courage, and determination. Abigail discovered that behind his rough appearance was a kind and honorable man. At night they talked beside the fire, shared stories, shared laughter, shared pain. Slowly, love began to grow between them. Neither spoke about it, but both felt it. Spring finally arrived. The snow started melting. Soon it would be time to return to civilization. Then danger struck. A gunshot shattered the cabin window. Jeremiah instantly tackled Abigail to the floor. More shots followed. Cobb had found them. 5 armed men surrounded the cabin. Leading them was Hiram Yates, Cobb's most dangerous enforcer. A fierce gunfight erupted. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls. Jeremiah returned fire with deadly accuracy. Abigail grabbed her Winchester rifle. She remembered every lesson Jeremiah had taught her. Through the window she spotted a gunman aiming at Jeremiah. She took a deep breath, pulled the trigger. The man dropped instantly. Jeremiah smiled proudly. The fight continued. Then Abigail saw Hiram sneaking toward Jeremiah's blind side with a shotgun. Without hesitation, she ran onto the porch. "Hiram!" The man turned, recognized her. His surprise lasted only a second, but that second was enough. Bang! Abigail fired. Hiram crashed into the snow. The remaining gunman fled in terror. The battle was over. For the first time in her life, Abigail realized she was no longer helpless. 2 days later, they rode into Silverton. This time, they weren't alone. A federal marshal rode beside them, and Hiram Yates rode behind them in chains. The Silver Crown saloon was packed. Bartholomew Cobb sat at a table with wealthy investor Josiah Trent. They were finalizing the sale of the Lucky Strike mine. Then the doors opened. The marshal stepped inside. Silence swept across the room. "Bartholomew Cobb," the marshal announced, "you are under arrest." Cobb's face turned white. Hiram had confessed. The evidence was overwhelming. Murder, fraud, forgery, illegal servitude. Everything was exposed. In panic, Cobb reached for a hidden weapon. Before he could grab it, Jeremiah's hunting knife slammed into the table inches from his hand. Jeremiah leaned forward, his eyes cold as winter. "I warned you." Cobb was dragged away in chains, screaming, begging, but nobody listened. Justice had finally arrived. The Lucky Strike mine was returned to its rightful owner, Abigail Higgins. The frightened servant girl had become one of the wealthiest women in Colorado. Later that evening, Abigail stood outside the saloon holding the deed to the mine. Her future was finally hers. She could go anywhere, do anything. Jeremiah stood beside her, quiet as always. "I suppose you'll be leaving now," he said softly. "You're rich. The whole world is open to you." Abigail smiled, then stepped closer. She gently touched the scar on his cheek, the same scar her father had once helped heal. "I've already found what matters most." Jeremiah looked into her eyes. "What do you mean?" Abigail's smile grew warmer. "I've seen the world down here." She glanced at the town, then back at him. "But my home is up there." She pointed toward the mountains. "With you." For a moment, Jeremiah simply stared. Then emotion filled his eyes. The walls around his heart finally broke. With a deep laugh, he lifted Abigail into his arms and kissed her. The townspeople burst into applause, but neither of them noticed. Because after years of pain, loss, and loneliness, they had finally found what both had been searching for. Not gold, not wealth, not revenge, but love. And together they rode back toward the mountains, ready to begin a new life, where the darkness of winter would never again control their future. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way till the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. It really helps us a lot. If you want to watch more exciting stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our page right now. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is right now? And if this story touched your heart, please send some stars. Every single star gives us huge motivation to keep creating more amazing videos for you. See you in the next story. Take care of you, friends.